the people.
Okay, good. Recording. Can we can't see people.
Yeah, you, not the people, but if you click on the participants, you'll see attendees and they're just jumping in like crazy.
Oh, participants. Oh, yeah. I see.
30, 31,
Yeah.
35, 40.
Well, and more fun is the names. You'll see people, you know, I'm sure.
Let me see if I'm seeing names.
Going fast. And people, please join, you know, say hello where you are, because I think Priscilla, well, we're all excited about tonight.
Hello, everyone coming in. I can't see who you are yet. 65 people here.
They're coming, yeah. There's
Hi, Stacy. Hi, Stacy.
there's a Sally. Sally says hi. Sally Ellsby.
Oh, Sally. Oh, hi, Sally.
Catherine from Chimacum. Catherine Sutoff. And
Hi, Catherine. There you are.
Jennifer
Allison,
McCord.
Jennifer McCord. Santa Fe, David Racklin. We used to have such a wonderful, you know, at the Tao Summer Writers Conference. And Sally was there too.
And Molly Tenenbaum is here.
Molly, my great banjo teacher and a great poet as well. Harry Hirsch from Oberlin, Ohio, my friend Harry, who wrote a great mystery novel, Shade. Laura Kalpakian.
Which I have read.
Yeah, Bethany read Shade. Shade is a great mystery novel. We should get him out here to read at Elliott Bay Books. Nancy Nichols, old friend from Boston. Joan Fise. Hi, Joan. Paula Becker, the great, and Barry. Paula Becker, the great. Now, let me see. Jim Harrod. Jim Harrod is, yes.
Kathy Flanagan, yeah.
I think he's getting a mention today.
Jim Harrod is right there. It is. Running. Oops, let me see. Jim Harrod. Jim O'Brien. Amy Davis, my very first client from a long time ago. O'Brien from Boston. Let's see. Deborah.
Hi, Colleen.
Colleen from Montana. Let's see here.
Carolyn in Arizona.
And Carolyn Harris made it. Yay. Jeanette Rosebook. Good.
James Kessler.
Some Bellingham people.
Ms. James Kessler from Baltimore. Yay. Joni. David Downing. Hi, David. David Downing has finally got his machine working. Anna Tolan. Hello, hello. Jerry Gale, the great poet. Jerry Gale.
We'll get started here shortly, but people are still, I think, coming into the room, as it were.
Ann Macy is here.
Sharon Goldberg. Hi, Sharon. Hi, Nan. Very excited to see you all.
Brenda in Franklin, Tennessee.
Wow.
Hi, Jay.
Hi, Jay. Andrea. Andrea Lewis. Elise. Michael Bean from Maryland. He says it's a good book. Yes, it is. Thank you, Michael. It's a good book. That means you must have received your book. That's good. Catherine DiNardo. Hi, Catherine. Works on Killer Whales. Fabulous writer. Jess Stone. I love you too.
Carol Peters is here. Good deal. Hi, Carol.
We're up to 101.
One of my blog followers and an old friend.
Okay, I think people are going to keep coming as they will, parking places as it were, since we're challenged for that here in Capitol Hill. But we know not everyone is on Capitol Hill, both in ways good and bad. So to everyone who I think knows where they are in terms of being virtually with us tonight, thank you very much for joining us from all the places that you are. We are, of course, from LA Bay Book Company. I'm literally in the room where Priscilla Long has held forth before and will again someday, I do believe. But tonight we're doing this in virtual form. She and Bethany Reid will be talking about Priscilla's just published marvelous new book, Dancing with the Muse in Old Age, a book that's just come out. And we're celebrating its publication tonight. So and though we have that, there's already the palpable affection going on in the chat, and we know it would be in the room here, the murmur of everyone as we begin. We also know that there are people here from places that wouldn't be able to so easily be here. So in that sense, we're really glad that you're all with us, and some of you are even in time zones to the east. So this is not so early at night. Thank you for joining us all wherever you are. We are, of course, I have a little out of practice of doing these virtual ones. I've been doing in person. You don't hold up the book in person like that. And just to acknowledge, since there's a lot of virtual stuff going on here, we are on Duwamish land here. And the language that precedes what Priscilla and Bethany will be talking tonight is the Coast Salish language of Lashut Seed. The language you're going to hear talked about tonight with Priscilla and Bethany is what Priscilla has done in this book, is language of living long, purposeful, creative life and being fully in it at a time, especially at life when the signals among many is that you should be like winding it down. And I think Priscilla is invoking light it up in full form. Doing so with certainly her own examples of of life, but also this book visits all kinds of writers and artists, creative people in many endeavors. Priscilla, in all her work, she's had books of her own poetry published, most recently Crossing Over, also the collection Holy Magic. She's done a series of books, many on creativity, Minding the Muse, which is a handbook for painters, composers, writers, and other creators. Probably most famously, the Writer's Portable Mentor, which has been through a few different editions and publications. We have our wonderfully long history with Priscilla, which goes back over 30 years. Includes her just spending time, we were just talking about this, her practically having a chair, a capital C chair in the cafe, a long chair of creative coaching, because she would meet writers or people for to do the one-on-one work that she is known and beloved for. What she's done in her work and what she's helped instill in others is something that this book brings out and shows her also work in that ground. With her is someone who's been doing a lot of this work with Priscilla, and that in Bethany Reid, herself, a wonderful poet, the author of 2 collections. Most recently, the first was the one, there was a full collection, Sparrow, done by Big Pencil Press, which received the Kenneth and Geraldine Gell Poetry Prize a decade ago. And then more recently, Ravenna Press does these wonderful 3 poet anthologies. They're basically chapbooks, but her collection, The Thing with Feathers, came out either before, somewhere in the pandemic. I think that I can't. Bethany, was that? I can't. I was either one of the last readings we had, or as of one of the early Zoom readings. It was like the memory is a little jostled with those. Tonight they will talk. They will visit, and I think they have their own wonderful history that I think tonight will show. And there'll be little bits of Priscilla reading. We also hope, besides your enthusiasm that's been conveyed already in the chat, as you have questions, both some of you I think have read the book, which has been going out in the mail and all that, and as well as people coming in here to Elliott Bay to sign it, to get it. But please put your questions in. You can put them in the Q&A portal, but well, probably a little easier. And that way Bethany can find them, and we'll see how that goes, and maybe she'll read from some of the comments in the chat too, because I know, again, I've said we know the kind of affection and regard and respect that Priscilla's engendered from her work, and which this book is a real testament to. It's there's all kinds of people I've been fun to see written of again, that we've crossed paths with over time, and now realizing, oh yeah, they are old. We are old. We're getting
Oh my God.
but thank you all again for being with us. And I am now, we'll just say, please join in giving even more virtual attention and applause to the wonderful Priscilla Long in conversation with Bethany Reid. Thank you both. Take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. And Elliott Bay Books is like the cultural center of Seattle. So thank you to Elliott Bay Books and Rick. Yeah, and to
Thank
Bethany.
you, Rick and Kate, who is in the background.
Yeah, yeah.
And I want to say thank you, Priscilla, for inviting me to come along on this journey.
Oh, anytime, Bethany.
It's been a revelation for me to read this book. I'll say a little more about that later, but I think I'll just jump in with our first question, which is, why did you write this book? And maybe as a corollary, who is its ideal reader?
Well, of course, I wrote it first of all for myself, because I am going to be 80 next year. And I really wanted to enter this new period of my life with this information. I wanted to know the science, and there's a lot of new science, I have to say. A lot has changed in the last 5 years in terms of what we know. And also I needed models. I needed models of old people who were vibrant, productive, connected to the community, and creating art. And all of the people in the book aren't artists, but a lot of them are. And so I just needed models like Wayne Thiebaud, who started a new body of work at age 98, his clowns, which are great. Yeah, and so then besides myself, I mean, the more I did research and learned, the more the audience is everyone over 40. Everyone over 40, I mean, should read this book. And then those in the audience that are under 40, you should read this book.
Your nieces and nephews read the book.
Yeah, because partly because so going to the science a little bit, just running through the main points, and we'll talk some of them later. So it's not so new that we know that the brain is plastic. We know that. We've known it for about 30 years, where the hippocampus can generate stem cells in an old brain. However, it's also very true that the brain is plastic the other way. If one is sitting around doing nothing and learning nothing and not moving, the hippocampus shrinks and your brain shrinks. So that's information that we all need to know. And then Becca Levy's work at the Yale School of Public Health, I mean, that was just a revelation, that she has done these longitudinal studies that show that a person who's say 20 or 30, who has negative attitudes toward both old people and aging and their own aging, they lose 7 years off their life. I mean, they have more cardiac, they have more dementia and so on, and earlier death. I mean, that's amazing. Of course, we need to move more, and we'll talk more about that. The huge research about happiness, old people tend to be happy. What do you know? and say as well as young people. I mean, not every old person is happy. Okay, not every young person is happy, but old people and young people tend to be happy. There's the famous U curve, because I think middle age tends to be very stressful. I think that's what that's about. And then also that we need to have less stress. And I have been lucky to be part of Mindfulness Northwest, which is based on, which is kind of a secular, you can be any religion or no religion, and it's a it's about reducing stress, and it's based on John Kabat-Zinn's program in Boston. And also, and this is, I guess we should talk about Rachel Wu, and that it's not about cognitive maintenance, it's about cognitive development. And this new science is I think it was the biggest revelation to me, aside from Becca Levy's work. So they study cognitive development over the lifespan, and and so their idea is that cognitive development, which is what we need to aim for, not maintenance. I mean, doing crossword puzzles and all that, if you like crossword puzzles, that's great, you know, if you enjoy that, but it's about cognitive development, and it works the same with old people as it does with children, exactly the same. And I'll just run down, if I can just, or shall I just run down?
Sure.
Bulleted list. Which is input from the immediate environment, which meaning that we have all our brilliance and all of our experience and so on, and so their idea is that middle-aged people who tend to be very busy, you know, if you have children, they tend to be teenagers. Maybe
you're working full time. You may have parents who need help. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, and so, you know, get off my back. Tell me to go.
Don't make me learn anything else. Yeah.
So we're using our experience and our native brilliance and all that in middle age. And so that's all natural and well. But as we get older, I mean, middle-aged people do not learn very much. I mean, that's their notion. And so it's time to, you know, start changing that as we get older. And so then individual scaffolding. And so we know that with children. I mean, you have to learn point A before you get to point B, before you get to point C. Growth mindset. You have to believe that you can learn. And, you know, it's like, you can't say, well, I'm too old for this.
Right.
That does not work.
Because what you believe or claim about it really, I mean, Becca Levy taught me that. Everyone should read her book too, The Age Bias.
Yeah. I mean, in other words, if you believe you're too old to learn something or do something, you're right. So anyway, a forgiving environment, and we know that, and seeing mistakes as a part of the learning process, and they say a serious commitment to learning. Eschew a hobbyist. They use the word hobbyist, and I'm not sure I agree with that word, but in other words, every endeavor, every new endeavor, say you decide, oh, I want to go into potting, I want to be a potter now, or try it, you know, well, anything like that, it's fun at first, and then there's this rocky period, and to just persist through that rocky period. And then they also say learning multiple skills at the same time. So that's just running down, you know, Rachel Wu, the neuroscience, Rachel Wu's list. And then I want to talk a little about the models, because these models, and I have to say, and they're not all, they're mostly visual artists and writers and potters, dancers.
Yeah, maybe I could, this is a good place for me to read that little passage I wanted to share.
Sure.
In the introduction, you write, in this book, I explore old painters, old writers, old filmmakers, old poets, old composers, old choreographers, old dancers, old photographers, old musicians, old sculptors, old printmakers, old designers. You know, I think of you as primarily a poet and a writer, a writing teacher, but the breadth and the diversity of the models is just stunning in this book.
Yeah, I've always loved the visual arts, and so yeah, and it's I think I was very struck by how many of these world-class creators were disabled. So that's an important point, because you don't have to be able-bodied to be a world-class creator. Like you know, Alma Thomas, who she was a great colorist and a painter, and she died in 1978. And right now she's having like a couple of big exhibitions in Washington, D.C., which, you know, I miss, alas. But I mean, that was worth the trip, but you know, COVID. But she was extremely disabled during her last extremely productive decade. She had arthritis and she broke her hip and so on and so on.
But she kept creating her work.
Yeah, and you know, we know about Matisse, who of course started his jazz cutout period from a wheelchair. And so I think that's fairly common knowledge, but I didn't know that Renoir, the French Impressionist painter Renoir, was extremely disabled during the last 30 years of his life with rheumatoid arthritis. And at that time, they didn't have, you know, the drugs and so on. But also models like Giuseppe Paterno. So let's talk about Giuseppe Paterno. It's one of my favorites.
He's a great example. I really paid attention to his profile.
Yeah, and he made it into the newspapers, which is how I learned about him. He decided to go to college at age 93. And so that's what I like to hear. He was a, you know, working class guy. He had to quit school. He's Italian. He had to quit school in the 8th grade, and to go to work to help support the family and all that. And then he spent his career as a surveyor for the Italian Railroad, and he raised, you know, he had a family and raised children. And he finished high school somehow. And then he decided at age 93 that he loved to read. His whole life he loved to read. Okay, so that's important. He decided he wanted to go to college. And so he applied and was accepted. And after about a month, he just thought, I don't think this is going to work, because all these people are so young. I mean, and so what am I going to do? So he went to one of the deans and said, do you think I should really do this? I mean, and the dean said, yes, you definitely should do it. So
of course, that's one of Rachel Wu's points, that we need encouragement. We need a supportive community.
Yeah, exactly. And so he graduated at the top of his class at age 97 in history and philosophy, I should say. And I love what he says about, and so just let me just read this short little thing. He says,
and this, Priscilla, I think is about cognitive development.
Yeah, I mean, I do too. I think this, he says, my time at university has changed me for certain. It's as if my brain has evolved. I've started to speak a different language. If I'm discussing the newspaper with my friends, I can articulate myself with greater precision. I'm still the same man I've been for coming up to a century, just with a few minor upgrades. But that really just struck me.
Mm-hmm. Well, a couple, you know, speaking of disability and late life achievements, I think there are a couple good examples in the book. One is Anna Mary Robertson Moses. People who changed genres because of their illness or their disability. But people tend to think that Grandma Moses came out of nowhere in her 70s, but
exactly. And what she did was, and we are dumping the term grandma, by the way.
Right.
Peter Sheldall in the New Yorker wrote a wonderful review of her an exhibition. I think it was at the Women's Museum of Art in Washington, D.C. and said, this is really a modern painter, and she all over anyway. And so she's not just a quaint folk painter. And so anyway, she previously she had done these very elaborate embroideries. She would design them, and they would be pictures like something like her paintings. I mean, they would have little roads and little houses and little people, very intricate embroideries with all different colors. And she got arthritis in her hands, and she could not manipulate the needle anymore. So she switched to painting in her 70s. And the rest is history. So, yeah, and a lot of the creators in this book and everywhere, because of physical limitations that came over them at a certain point, they did not quit. They just changed medium.
Marilee Shapiro Asher was another one, right? Who couldn't
she
heavy
was
sculpting any longer.
Yeah, she was and she got in the newspaper. She was a fairly well known, although I did not know of her, but she was a fairly well known sculptor, and she got in the newspaper because at age 107 she got COVID. And later that year, she did die. She got in the paper because she had the 1918 flu, and she had both. So yeah, and so she went from she could no longer handle the heavy materials that she worked with as a sculptor. So she went to digital art, but kept just as active. She was extremely happy. I mean, it's in the book. You can read the book. She's a great example. I mean, the joy that she got from making art is just really. And then Sarah Yerkes.
Oh, good example. I love this.
Sarah Yerkes, who published her first book of poems.
And I bought and read that book.
And it's a good book, right?
Yeah, it's very good.
Yeah, it's a good book. After the Age of 100. And so my whole concept of how old is has changed, because these models, many of them are so old. I mean, we're talking, 90s and 100s. Alex Katz in his 90s, who's just like making huge, paintings. And also there are models who aren't in the arts. Like, I think his name is Bob Halberstadt, who's a firefighter, and he enjoys firefighting. Thank you very much. And he's 85.
And that's his community too, his supportive community.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I think what the takeaway is it's really important to be proactive. This is a main thing I've gotten from all of this, aside from being totally
well, let me ask that question. What are the challenges then? I'm going to try to say this very briefly, but I spent several years in the last decade helping care for my mother, who had Alzheimer's and did not have a successful aging story. But when you spend a lot of time in skilled nursing care with an elderly parent, you start to think, well, everybody's left. And, this book revolutionized my thinking and gave me, but what would you say are the challenges of?
Well, just stop a minute and talk about memory loss. I mean, it's a complicated, I think it's too complicated to totally get into here. So read the book.
Which I did.
Oh, good. But you know, memory loss is not the end of life, and I think it's really important that we you know, that we respect and deeply care for and love, and you can have a full life with memory loss, and as we know, and there are and you know, people with memory loss can be more creative than people without memory loss.
And also from reading your research, and you know, of course, this isn't personal opinion, it's science. Not that large a percentage of us are doomed to have dementia.
Yeah, it's not a normal part of aging, and yeah, that's right. And so there's that, and so okay, what was the question? Where were we? Where are we?
Well, just what are the challenges of
well, you mean of the research? Oh, yeah. So I read a lot of biographies, and I had to have concrete information about these various people. I mean, it's like more than 100, I think more than 100 people were talked about in the book. And a lot of biographies, they're very, you know, very detailed in the childhood, which is right and proper, very detailed about the early and then mid-career, which is right and proper too. And then last 20 years, just skip over, just like 3 pages. And so as if there's, what else is new? Well, actually, a lot else can be new. So for example, one example of this was B.B. King, who I really wanted, you know, I adore B.B. King. So I really wanted to include him. And so I did. And after this is over, if you aren't going to bed because you're, you know, it's practically midnight and on the East Coast, go to YouTube and look at B.B. King singing The Thrill Is Gone at age 85. It's thrilling. So, but, you know, I had a lot of experiences like that where, I mean, I have a thick file of models. I keep collecting them.
and not everyone made it into the book.
Who didn't. I mean, there's so many. I mean, it was not a problem. It was not like I had to search to find it. No, I mean, they're all over the place. And so I am collecting, you know, a thick, like Bob Dylan is not in the book, you know, for example. And
there's
so
a wonderful New Yorker biopic of him.
Yeah, that was great.
Recently.
Yeah. And so so I think that's just part of this, and we're all, of course, every one of us is very affected by this kind of ageism, and this is a book against ageism.
Well, maybe we've sort of skipped over that question of why do you embrace the word old?
Oh yeah, right. So I like the word old. It's an old English word. I like old English words a lot, and also, see, the reason we don't like the word old is because we think young is good and old is bad. And I think old is good. So there. Plus, so it's an anti-ageist, really. I want to use the word old. People, I mean, elder is fine, you know, senior, all that, it's all fine. But I like the word old. And so, and there's this expression, old souls, which I always have loved that expression. And it's a great compliment to be called an old soul. And so, and then also there's now, I mean, there is a lot of age discrimination. So some people, you know, are right to not want to state their age, but there's a kind of a movement called Say Your Age. If you go to Instagram and there's a picture and then there's your age. And so I am kind of proudly part of that. So, but since we are now so aware that one's beliefs and expectations about aging have such a powerful influence on your fate. It's like, not that we can control our fate, right? I mean, we know that we can't, we don't know how much longer we have. We don't know. We don't know what will happen to us. We don't know, obviously. But it's very possible to influence our fate. And to be, and my whole, I think my whole shift in my own outlook is to be proactive. And
part of this is moving your body. Now, you're not, famously, you are not an athlete, but what are you doing?
I am an athlete, and my sport is reading Dickens. So there.
Yes, drinking a latte and reading a novel is my idea of a perfect hour. Yeah.
Right.
But so what are you doing?
But along with the idea of being proactive, well, first I take yoga, my wonderful yoga class. I think some of my yoga, I think, are here. And also I have bonded with my Fitbit, and I do walk my 10,000. I'm pretty religious about walking my 10,000 steps, and I also do weights. And so, I mean, I'm not athletic at all. And yet I found that if you just start and you do, you work up to it, it's like the federal guidelines, it's not running marathons. It's not running half marathons. It's not.
I have to say, Priscilla, that we just from the chat, someone said, your yoga peeps are here, Priscilla.
Oh, yay. We have the greatest yoga class in, America. So Lisa Holtby is my yoga teacher.
Okay.
And actually, one of my favorite, even though I'm not an athlete at all, one of my favorite models here is not an artist. His name is Don Pellman.
Oh, I wanted to ask you to tell about him.
Yes,
He's wonderful.
Don Pellman. Let me see. I have to read because I'm so unathletic. I don't even know the terms. But anyway, he was the fastest person excuse me just a minute. He was the fastest person to sprint a certain distance. That's a world record over the age of 100.
And my first question is, well, how many people were in his category?
Right. And you might say, oh, well, sure. Yeah, where's the competition? Right. Well, actually, there was competition.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing about this. They're out there.
And I do have to read you my favorite statistic of the book. Okay. Can I read you my favorite? There are statistics in the book. I mean, I think it reads well. You can just read them, but some of them
you could also dip into the footnotes. Yeah.
Yeah. So here's my favorite statistic. A quarter of marathon runners in their 60s can be expected to outperform more than half of their competitors between 20 and 54. And, and so why? Because they train. They don't say, oh, well, I used to, do this or that or the other. And now, of course, I'm getting old, and so I won't do that anymore. They train. And this is also true. And no, I've been a senior. I'm an old lady. There's a funny thing in the chat. And so, oh yeah, I was going to mention the dancers. Like it is
like Merce Cunningham and
Merce Cunningham, yeah, Merce Cunningham, and going back to Martha Graham that Merce Cunningham worked with, and Carmen de Lavalade, and Jose Limon. I mean, so So it's customary for dancers to become too old to dance at age 40 or whatever it is, 30, or whatever it is, whatever the age is. And they just continued. And at the age of 70, Martha Graham got terrible arthritis in her hands and she could no longer dance. And she was devastated. I mean, this was just a devastating stage that happened to her. And so she kind of went into major decline for 3 years. I mean, she drank a lot and all that. And then she came out of it and she started choreographing again and directing her company again. And she went another 15 years. She choreographed Maple Leaf Rag at the age of 96. So she's the first. I mean, Twyla Tharp. I mean, Twyla Tharp is not that old. But I mean, I'm starting to get used to thinking of old as in your 90s.
Yeah, people in their 70s and 80s are
70s and
not
80s.
that old.
Like, not that old, but Twyla Tharp is a great model for all kinds of things. Connie Field, hi Connie. I dance, we fast walk, great haircut, Priscilla.
Well, Priscilla, so in addition to the exercise though, you're playing banjo?
Yeah, as
Tell us about that.
some of the old friends in the audience know, I used to be learning banjo, and I sort of hit a dead end. And I quit 40 years ago. And I just hit a dead end. And so I quit. And now I have taken it up again. And Molly Tenenbaum is my teacher. And so there's that. And also, I've also taken up math. I mean, so in other words, in terms of my own being proactive, so I do research and write, I write, all kinds of things. So for example, I wrote the historylink.org, the online encyclopedia of Washington State history. I wrote a piece on salmon in the Pacific Northwest. That's one type of piece. And then another type of piece I wrote was on writing, which came out in the Hudson Review, which was on like the Sumerians, the origin of writing and all kinds of other things. So that's like, okay, I could say, okay, well, I do all this research and learn all this stuff, but my thinking is, yeah, but it's the kind of research I'm really good at. It's not really, I mean, the actual process of getting that information and putting it together is what I'm very experienced at. So these two things, and I love the music anyway. And I find math to be rather interesting. I mean, I always hated math because, if you have your 4th grade teacher is yelling at you, that's not going to be a good outcome for math. But so, yeah, so it's, and the other thing, excuse me, I think we should talk about is connections with other people. And so, and that is, again, it's just extremely, we know that. I mean, we know that. Michael Beeman says math. But about the math, I want to encourage, or I want to inform all of my various friends and relatives that I am not receiving pop quizzes. So let's be very clear on that. So anyway, so in terms of connecting, it's extreme, we know how important it is. But what happens as you get older, the older you get, the more this happens. This is just about universal, is that your dear friends of your life and family members predecease you. And so it just, I'm only 79. I've lost, something like 15 people. It's just
People
like
close to you.
Very close, dear friends. And so that I've known for decades, and so they're part of me, they're part of my life, they're part of me. And so, and people talk about loneliness. So, it's what I've learned is it's important to be proactive. It's not like we're gonna and in all of whatever we choose to, whatever endeavor we choose to enter into, there's always communities around any endeavor, right? So it's really, I mean, and it's not like everyone you meet, it's not like we're social butterflies anymore, because we're not. But it's really important to, I mean, there's so many ways to engage with communities that are around whatever you're interested in doing. And so, and to talk about
And
loneliness.
to meet younger people and
Younger and, you know, older and younger. Yeah, older and younger and all kinds of people. And it's not, and then to find people who you really can connect with. That really, you know, oh, this, I would really learn something from knowing this person, and sort of like that. Because so talk, because people bring up loneliness, dementia, loneliness, and I don't know what else. So let's talk about can we talk about loneliness? Sure. Loneliness, I'm talking about chronic loneliness.
Which can be a stereotype of old age.
Yeah, but it's chronic loneliness is dangerous. It's worse than bad. It's very dangerous, and it is dangerous for a teenager. It's dangerous. You don't want your college student. You don't want that. You don't want your person in your 20s or 30s, your recently divorced person in their 40s, and an old person. I mean, you do not want chronic loneliness. It's like supposed to be worse than, you know, than drunk driving or something. It's just like really bad, really, really bad. It's so again, so what happens to people who are aging is they start losing people. And so if you must, it's very important to be proactive, and you're not going to go to some book group or something and suddenly meet your best friend. It's a process. But I feel it's a very important process, because you're not gonna have all your good buddies of old. And you can imagine a centenarian. Now think of a centenarian who has lost almost all of the people from the old days,
right?
Or all of them, you know. What were you gonna say?
Well, we're gonna run out of time.
Oh,
and I really wanted. Well, you have a passage you want to read, but I really wanted to get in that question of what's an advantage of being an old creator?
Oh, there are tons. I mean, there's a whole chapter on the advantages. You know, there's all this experience. You know, we have so much experience, and it's a kind of meta experience in the sense that we know how to learn. Like this, when I said, you know, I ran into a dead end back when I quit playing banjo. See, that would never happen again, because now I'm very experienced in all kinds of creating things. And
you've learned how to learn.
Yeah. And so if you, I mean, I
and know. We see this with artists who change genre late in life.
Yeah, exactly.
They know how to learn that.
Right. And so one of the strategies is make a lateral move. I mean, that's just, you know, or if you like, look at David Hockney. David Hockney, I love his work. Anyway, he was an oil painter, and he debated switching to watercolors because it's hugely different.
And he thought it would take him 6 months.
6 months. It took him more like 4 years, but he decided to do it. And then his watercolors are just, you know, stunning. And that was, I think he was in his 60s or something like that. Then now he's in his 80s, and he switched to digital painting. And he's done all, but he hasn't abandoned oil painting either. But that type of, and so to me, the big challenge as a creator of any kind is, where do you go? How do you avoid repeating yourself?
Mhm.
You know, how do you, you know, avoid just like going the again and again? And how do you open? And I think, I mean, there's like, I don't know what the answer is, but one answer is you intend, and one I intend to not repeat yourself. And another answer is to open new doors, be a beginner again in something that's.
And you've emphasized to me, well, it's in the book too, Kay Walking Stick, Alice Neal, this wonderful visual artist, Marilee Shapiro Asher, they all talk about how their engagement is with the work. They don't worry or they don't feel anxious about the reception.
And that's an age development where you're less concerned with the world's opinions.
They're
of you.
concerned with making this work.
And it's when you're working on something, it's you have a relationship with this work, with the work itself, and you're speaking, and there's a relationship there, and you're not saying, oh, is this going to work out? Oh, is what somebody going to think of me? And so that's, you know, that's a real result of experience, and also you know, you learn how to finish.
Oh, mhm.
So you know that I mean, you know, on and on. I mean, there's a whole chapter on what are the advantages of being an old creator. So
well, we talked about when we rehearsed this, which believe it or not, we did. We talked about ending with the passage from Oliver Sacks.
yeah, I will just
Wanting to get to the questions in the Q&A. I think we need to skip to that.
okay. And so the other thing that I wanted to say about loneliness, which, as you know, is that also old people tend to be happier than middle-aged people. They tend to be happy. You know, it might be some kind of thing in the brain where a positivity thing clicks in. You know, some people think that, I don't know. But here's Oliver Sacks, my favorite writer in the whole world. I adore Oliver Sacks, the neurologist. He says, he was nearing 80. He was writing about his father, and he said, my father, who lived to 94, often said that his 80s had been one of the most enjoyable decades of his life. He felt, as I begin to feel, not a shrinking, but an enlargement of mental life and perspective. One has a long experience of life, not only one's own life, but others too. One has seen triumphs and tragedies, booms and busts, revolutions and wars, great achievements and deep ambiguities too. One has seen grand theories rise only to be toppled by stubborn facts. One is more conscious of transience and perhaps of beauty. And then the end quote, and then he continues, he speaks of his own old age. I do not think of old age as an ever grimmer time that one must somehow endure and make the best of, but as a time of leisure and freedom, freed from the factitious urgencies of earlier days, free to explore whatever I wish and to bind the thoughts and feelings of a lifetime together. And so that's, you know, Oliver Sacks.
Brilliant. Brilliant. There's a wonderful story in the chat from Molly Tenenbaum about her mother. They went to the movies, and at the ticket counter, the guy says to her, "Senior?" She replied, "No, I haven't been a senior since high school. I'm an old lady." So she would agree with your embrace of the word old. Alan Braden asked if you found more old timers in one artistic discipline than the others.
Hi, Alan. Great poet, Alan Braden. No, no. I mean, I just kept exploring, and I continue to find them, by the way. But I mean, I'm very interested in the arts, and that's why I think I found. So I will say, and this isn't even in the book, but if you look at old time music, there's this tremendous relationship between older and younger musicians, you know, just going back to the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, And now, I mean, old time fiddle and traditional American music, there's a that's not even in the book because it's just like one thing too many. But there's a tremendous amount of interchange and learning and engagement among generations in that field. But no, I just, everywhere I look, I mean, I could have looked in. I mean, I went to. I'm in the arts, and so I love the arts, and I love visual arts, even though I'm not a visual artist. And so, of course, that's where I look. But no, everywhere I looked, there's more examples of people that you would like envy to be this
Oh,
person.
yeah. Looking at the pictures of these people, that just blew my mind.
Yeah.
Another question is, what advice would you give someone in their 50s about how to prepare for this chapter in life?
Yeah, I mean, the first advice I advise you to do is read this book. Seriously, and all of the things, and that's why, to learn these things, the science really earlier than 70 or 80 would be a tremendous advantage.
And you pointed out early on, the science has really changed.
Really, I mean,
I remember hearing that by about age 26, our brains were toast. It was just, we were just losing brain cells from then on. And now it's all changed. It's plastic right up through old age.
Yeah, I mean, the brain is plastic. And also what's really fascinating and pretty new, well, this whole cognitive development thing is very new. I mean, it's just out, but also that the expectations, and there's a long conversation about memory, which I don't think we have time for, but it's in the book, about how in societies where elders are highly respected, which is not mainstream America, there isn't memory loss the way, and that's like in traditional Chinese communities, and the American deaf community are two examples.
Where elders are revered.
And there's not the memory loss. The elders have the same memory. So let's dump the phrase senior moment. No more. Done.
Yeah, teenagers can be forgetful. We don't say they're having a junior moment.
Right. But I do think that my greatest wish is that people who are 50 and 40 would read this book, because I think it really, I mean, has changed. It has really enlightened me. I mean, it has really been important to me, all this.
Well, there's a question, and we're coming right up on 7 o'clock, by the way, but what surprised you most about all this research? What surprised you most?
Just all of it. I mean, I find myself blown away by this information, and I mean, just, did we talk about Don? I mean, we're out of time. Did we talk?
Yes.
Don, we didn't talk about Don.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
We did. Just, I mean, to me, for me personally, it just opens up, no matter how like I said, we don't know how long we have to live. We know if we become disabled or are disabled, that is not a barrier to being to creating. So that was a big, because there's this whole, quote, successful aging. I don't like that term, to tell you the truth, but movement, and I mean, it's fine. I read, of course, that literature, and of course, this is part of it, I guess. This book is part of that literature, but it's still, it tends to sort of favor the able-bodied, and I really work against that. I mean, these world-class creators are not necessarily able-bodied. Many of them are not, and so that was just a revelation to me. And also just all of it. I mean, the older athletes, I mean, the other thing is, you can you can make a model of someone who is really totally different from you, and you don't aspire to do what they did. But like, I think Don Pellman is the example, the over 100-year-old who had world records.
Running.
Right. And so he is a model for me, not because I want to become a sprinter. I don't, please. But he's a model for me because he just felt like I want to do this. I feel like doing this. And during the time where he was making these world records, by the way, he was in assisted living, which I think is very interesting. I don't know what they assisted him with. I have no idea. But see, he and there's, you know, the Angela Glendenning from who is not creative at all. She just like doesn't like to do anything that's creative, but she is works with immigrants and in social justice, and has made friends, and has a very meaningful life after Buffy St. Marie. Yeah, yes. And so Dave, I'm
Well,
now.
I know we're going to save the chat, and I just have to tell you that glancing through it, you're just getting a lot of love and approval for this.
It's
for
yeah,
this
it's a
tremendous
wonderful project. I mean, like, I'm so glad that somebody told me I did this little talk at Elliott Bay when I was it was actually launching the second edition of the Writer's Portable Mentor. And I just, you know, I wanted to do, I didn't want to, we all know about the Writer's Portable Mentor. So I did my little talk on aging. Well, I've learned so much since then, but somebody said, oh, well, why don't you write a book on that? And so I thought, oh, okay. But I just had no idea I would learn so much.
Yeah, thank you for writing this book, Priscilla.
Hi, Rick. There's Rick.
No, this has been great, and everyone's a lot of the comments are saying, let's do this again, do it again, the two of you. At the same time, probably everyone needs to take little breaks or whatever, but and go do things. I have a feeling I mean, active night for a lot of people. They're going to go off to sleep. They're going to be doing yoga or dancing or doing whatever. This has just been great, both of you. Priscilla, certainly with what's in these pages, but all that you've brought to it, and also just how this has gone between both the two of you. It's just been Bethany has been.
You can tell we've known each other a long time.
That's part of all this, and yet you both, I mean, you know, clearly you keep encountering and finding new things. Lovely to hear Oliver Sacks spoken of. I actually want to mention, because Jennifer McCord chimed in, the book is published by people who are not young either. Phil Garrett and Jennifer McCord of Coffeetown Press, both have been way up there in years of doing what they do and helping.
Yeah, and I'm so grateful for them. I mean, they have just done a beautiful job, and so thank you.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. Thank you.
And I put this in the chat, didn't mention it, but but we're talking about the beautiful painting that's on the cover of Priscilla.
Oh, yeah.
It's by Carol Nelson, an 81-year-old artist in Colorado. So she's mentioned in the book. Priscilla, you should read. You have to read the new Cormac McCarthy at age 89 has 2 novels out this fall.
Oh, I haven't read them, and I love Cormac McCarthy. So
it's not just that, but he's been hanging out with these physicists and everything in Santa Fe. So he's got all this stuff about math, and I mean, these characters are just spewing. You know, he's clearly been reveling his own learning this stuff, and he does it quite artfully in the novel. So that as a gets to a few of your pleasures together there, I think.
That'll be my next read.
Anyway, and it's been wonderful. Also, many of the people here are themselves makers and writers and create artists and all that. So
much.
You've known many of them over the years, and all this to continue. Again, as many of you been getting the book, you can order it from us, or you can come into Elliott Bay and get copies. I think we have signed copies, and Priscilla will come back in and sign some more. In fact, we have a new batch have come in. So thank you both, Priscilla and Bethany.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone. Thank you, Kate, my colleague, who's in somewhere else down here at the bookstore, and all the good work that's gone into making this happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you all for coming. I just so appreciate it. And it's so great to see your names. So yeah, thank you. I wish we were all in the same room.
Be a lot, yeah, all the fun stuff. Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Night.
Okay, good night.